So I'm here with Bernardo from OzHarvest. And Bernardo, I just wanted to have a chat to you about OzHarvest and your story with OzHarvest. But first, I'd love for you to give us a little rundown on how you got involved and what your position at OzHarvest is.
No problem. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for
My
coming
name is
on.
Bernardo Tobias. So I am the Victorian and South Australian State Manager for OzHarvest. So I run all the operations in both states. My story with OzHarvest is an interesting one. It began way before I even heard of OzHarvest. So
Okay.
back in 2004, 2005, roughly, I was working in a hotel in Sydney CBD, and I grew very tired of seeing these beautiful muffins and sandwiches that they had in the cafe in the ground level, going to waste at the end of each day. Every day, as I was finishing work, going past it, I would see all of that going to waste. So I decided to do something about that. And I started packing them in bags and taking them to a group of rough sleepers just around the corner from the hotel.
Okay.
I did that every single day for a few months, but one day I was busted. I was busted by a council worker who threatened to fine me. And then when I reported back to the hotel, I was like, oh, guys, I just got busted giving out these things. I actually got into trouble at the hotel. So
With the hotel as well.
yeah, it boggled my mind that it was illegal to divert surplus food due to liability laws in New South Wales back then. So,
And
it boggled my mind. I was like, this is just incredible. Like, how can this actually happen? So 10 years went by, and in 2015, I got my Australian citizenship. I kept working in hospitality and food industry by then. And I wanted to, that Australian citizenship is a big thing. So I had, that urge for personal growth, and I decided to change careers, but I had no idea what I was going to do. I was sick of hospitality, tired of it, but I didn't know what I was going to do. So I kept looking for things for about 14 months. I knew that I wanted to work with food. And
yeah.
I knew that I wanted to give back to the country that welcomed me with open arms. So those are the only two things that I knew. And I was looking for 14 months. I was looking for the perfect opportunity. So one day I was talking to a mate, and he said, man, you should come and work at OzHarvest. Come and work with me at OzHarvest. I knew he was a driver, but I had no idea about OzHarvest and about the work that OzHarvest did. And or the work that this guy was doing. So I was having a chat to him, and I was asking him the questions, and I was in awe. So
Right.
when researching a little bit further, I discovered that it was Ronnie Khan, our CEO and founder, that changed the laws in 4 different states to allow for food to be rescued and delivered to people in need without the fear of liability. And that was
Wow.
incredible. As soon as I heard that, I was like, I need to work for this woman. I need to work for this powerhouse. So I took a 40,000 a year pay cut, and I started
That's
driving
quite significant.
OzHarvest. Yep. So it was pretty much a massive blow to my
Yeah.
life
Huge.
standards. I used to manage hotels by then, but then I decided to drive for OzHarvest. So I took a role as a driver. And that role changed my life. So I'm a
Right.
chef by trade, and I always
Okay.
had like a deep connection with food
Yeah.
and what it represents to humanity. And but witnessing, by driving for OzHarvest and witnessing the quality and the quantity of food that gets wasted in this country every day was just shocking, man. So
Yeah.
like every day at OzHarvest became a bit of a personal quest to ensure that changes takes place in Australia, and
Yeah.
that I play my part in creating a better and more sustainable food culture in Australia. So I started sort of taking more responsibilities. I joined the New South Wales logistics team, and then I moved into business development, looking specifically at food on engagement in the retail sector. So I used to manage the relationships with 170 odd supermarkets in Sydney. And then I got a call from Ronnie offering me the position to oversee the OzHarvest operations in Victoria and most recently in South Australia. So as a dual state manager,
Wow. Yeah.
I manage a workforce of 45 incredibly passionate staff across the 2 states here to rescue and redistribute food, to fundraise, to deliver education and engagement programs. And as the key OzHarvest ambassador in Victoria and South Australia, I'm responsible for managing the relationships with the private sector, with the government, with the not-for-profit sector, and the food industry, advocating for and creating long-term sustainable change here in the South. So that's pretty much, I think that's pretty much the story, the full story. That gives you a bit of a picture.
Yeah, oh, it gives a brilliant picture and an inspiring one at that as well. That's quite an incredible journey to end up to where you are today. I did want to jump back onto one thing that you said that I find really interesting. You were saying how you're a chef by trade and you'll always have a deep connection to food and how food represents so much for humanity. I'd love to just spend a minute talking about what you think food represents to humanity.
Yeah.
Elaborate on that for a little bit.
Absolutely. Food is everything, man. Food is everything. Food is dignity. Food is a basic human right. Food is the fuel that fuels our bodies and keeps us going. Food Absolutely. Is so important. It's so important. It gets us together. It gets us in the room, like in every human celebration, every human event, every human interaction involves food. The sentence or the action of breaking bread and getting together, it literally makes us human. Literally makes us human. We cannot overestimate the importance of food in our lives. We just simply can't overestimate the importance of food in our lives. It's it's very sad to see it treated as a commodity or as just something that you can just walk into a shop and buy and forget about it.
Absolutely.
It is a lot more than that. It basically, in its essence, it makes us human.
I agree 100%. That's very well put. I lost for words. That was brilliant. I 100% agree that it is sad to see that it's treated as such a commodity, something that you can grab and store and throw away when you don't need anymore, rather than appreciate and share with those around you. And I also think it's quite sad that not everyone gets to appreciate food in the way that yourself, myself, and the members making this documentary have learned to appreciate it. And that's due to the fact that so much of it is just being thrown away and discarded and not given a second thought once it's out of mind. Out of sight, sorry. And so I think that's another sad thing that comes into play, the fact that there's so many people who are hungry and can't appreciate and get to experience that breaking of bread and coming together to cook and share a meal. It makes it even worse when we consider how much is being wasted.
Yeah, it's shocking. It's shocking when we think about a third of all food produced is wasted.
That's one of the more shocking facts. It's
It's
disgusting.
just abhorrent, and it's one of those things that it is shocking. It's I usually share an example. I went to the movies one day with a friend not long ago, and we walked out of the movies. It was about 11 o'clock at night, and as we walked out, that person decided to just go and buy some bread. And that person was really, really disappointed and frustrated that they couldn't get bread at 11 o'clock at night in the supermarket because they had run out. And that made me think, as consumers, we have, we expect it to be there available for us, like how dare they not having that bread available for me at 11 o'clock at night. And I, realistically, and that's what I had a really deep conversation with that person that day, basically just saying, how many people actually buy bread at 11 o'clock at night? Imagine if they had the shelves full. That bread would just go stale really quickly.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Then who buys stale bread? Nobody. So what would happen with all that bread? It would go straight in the bins. And bread is one of the major concerns for food waste. But
yeah,
we know that food waste happens across the whole spectrum. So we know that fruit and vegetables, for example, are the major, the most wasted products. But we know that meats get wasted a lot. We know that dairy get wasted a lot. So it happens everywhere, and it happens from paddock to plate. So it happens at every stage of the food supply chain. We have a very convoluted food system. It basically, food loss or food waste happens across the entire supply chain, but ultimately we are the largest culprits, because these organizations across the supply chain, they respond to what we expect. They respond, and they basically shape their businesses to essentially cater for our needs and our wants.
And I'd definitely say it's definitely on the more of the want side of things as well. That example of that person going for bread at 11 p.m. I don't know their situation, but I imagine they wouldn't be using that whole loaf at 11 p.m. So what's happening to the rest of that loaf? Is it just a quick urge or a craving for a sandwich?
Yeah.
And then the rest of the loaf goes into the bin. Unfortunately, we were talking about bread being one of the most wasted food products. I believe that for every loaf we buy, half a loaf goes to waste, which is, if you visualize that every time you buy a loaf and you add on, I believe there's 18 slices in a loaf of bread. So you have 18 and then you have another 9 slices that are just straight into landfill.
That's correct. And people don't take into perspective, like, for example, bread's made out of flour, right?
Right.
So, and flour is made out of wheat. And wheat takes an awful lot of water, for example, to grow.
Right.
So, and these are all the facts. So when you waste food, you're wasting everything. You're wasting resources. You're wasting the time and the love and the water and the soil and everything. So food production uses about 71% of our fresh water supply in the world. So seeing that we waste about a third of all food produced, that just means that we are wasting more than 1 in 5 liters of precious, finite fresh water resources that we have. So every 5 liters that we have, and in Australia, we have a water crisis here.
Absolutely.
To be wasting, people don't think about that. You gave the example of a sandwich, a simple burger. So think about this. So just the bread buns, a meat patty, a slice of tomato, a slice of lettuce, and pickles.
Yeah.
That takes, to make that burger, it takes the equivalent of a 90-minute shower.
Wow.
Put that into perspective. So, when we think about our our goals and targets, and we just talk about that 150 liters a day, for example, which is a target that we've seen in Australia on and off with the water crises that we've seen in our lifetimes. And we all rush into the showers, right? We rush in and rush out the showers, and we turn off the taps, and we do all of that sort of stuff. But then we walk down the road to the burger shop, and we get a burger that is too large from what we actually feel like. We eat half of it, and we throw out half of it. We're throwing
all
out
the time.
enough water to basically have a 45-minute shower. So why are we rushing in the shower in the first place? And
when we can save 45 minutes.
Exactly right. Exactly
Yeah.
right. And that's the thing. So, but it uses a lot of land as well. So the food that we waste worldwide, it uses about 18% of the entire Earth's surface to grow, including the meat industry.
Wow. That's quite shocking.
It's a lot. It's a lot. So, and that's the thing. And if we're talking about when we talk about the food waste is an issue. In Australia, we waste about 7.6 million tons of food every year. So just
7.6 million.
7.6 million. And there's three sides of this, okay? So there is the environmental issue.
Yeah.
So this is what we're talking about, like it uses 71% of our fresh water supply to grow it. If we're wasting a third of it, it's 1 in 5 liters of water being wasted. Food production in terms of land, like the food that we waste is responsible for 18% of the Earth's surface. So, and when you grow it and when you farm it, you're basically releasing a lot of carbon from the soil as well. So you're working on that soil, releasing a lot of that carbon from that soil. And that's just on food production. So when it comes down to the disposal of our food waste, like people just think that we throw the stuff in the bin and then it just disappears, right? We throw it in the wheelie bins and it disappears.
It's
No,
not our problem anymore.
Somewhere. Yeah, exactly, right? And then your bin is empty. Magic. That's gone, disappeared. Yeah. So whilst there are councils in Australia that are starting to offer solutions for food and organics recycling, which is something that we support.
Yeah.
The vast majority of our food waste ends up still in 2021, it still ends up in landfill. So, and food takes an awful long time to decompose in landfill.
Yeah.
And while that happens, it produces methane. So methane dissipates in the atmosphere in around 10 years. Okay, so it's much shorter than CO2. So that's why CO2 hangs around the atmosphere much longer than what methane does.
Okay.
So that's why people talk about CO2.
Yeah.
But methane, and here's the catch. Methane traps heat in the atmosphere 25 times faster than CO2. So whilst it dissipates in 10 years, it traps heat in the atmosphere 25 times faster than CO2, which makes food waste more harmful to the environment than the entire aviation industry combined, for example.
Food.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. That's blown my mind completely, because I know that during COVID, no one's been talking about the aviation industry, but right before that, especially in 2019, and we had Greta Thunberg sail around to do some talks on climate change, but everyone was targeting the aviation industry and talking about lowering our aviation usage. When
don't get me wrong, aviation industry we need to lower that too.
Absolutely. No, I do agree with that. I absolutely do. I'm just absolutely shocked that while that was such a massive focus, not the real issue, but a bigger issue is it's in our kitchen, it's in our backyard, it's in our wheelie bins, it's in the burger that we leave on the Macca's bench.
Let me give you a little bit more perspective around that. So people not really aware about the link between food waste and climate change, right?
Right.
So food waste is a major contributor to climate change. It's the best, I usually say it's low-hanging fruit. It's the easiest way to be a climate activist and and really walk the talk.
Yeah.
So food waste is responsible for 10% of all global greenhouse gases emissions, okay? 10%. So let's put into perspective. Extracting oil, which is horrible for the environment, is responsible for 3.8%. Producing plastic is responsible for 3.8%. Flying, so the entire aviation industry, 1.9%. Food is 10%. So put that into perspective. It's almost three times worse than extracting oil.
Oh my God. Wow. That's
Yeah. And look, and this is from an environmental perspective. We could talk here all day about the environmental perspective, the environmental
it sounds like it.
Waste.
Yeah.
But from an economic perspective, food waste in Australia, just in Australia, it costs over $36 billion a year.
A year.
A year. It is estimated that an average Australian household wastes up to $4,000 per year on food.
Every household.
Every household, up to $4,000 a year. People can take a holiday. People can do all that sort of stuff. We hear during the pandemic, we hear about people doing really tough financially.
Yeah. Yeah.
This could really boost up their household income if people just knew how to deal with it. Of course, nobody likes wasting food. I'm not saying here
Of course
that people do it on purpose and all that sort of stuff. It's not that at all. But the reality is that everybody wastes food. I am guilty of it sometimes, you know, like even though I do everything here to make sure that I don't waste it, every now and then it happens, and that's the sad thing about it. And 70% of the food that we throw away is perfectly edible, and
70%.
70%.
Wow.
And you know, financial resources are the main reason as well why people may be pushed into food insecurity. So that brings in the third aspect. So we talked about the environmental aspect, we've talked about the economic aspect, and finally, from a social perspective, which is the third biggest impact that makes food waste such an issue, pre-COVID, and this has been exacerbated significantly with the pandemic, but pre-COVID, 6 million Australians out of 25 million that we have in the country, 6 million needed to access food relief each year for not being able to afford or access food, when in fact we produce enough food to feed everyone.
6 million.
6 million. 1 in 5 children in Australia go to bed or go to school hungry. And this is Australia. We're talking about a lucky, wealthy country.
A very wealthy country.
Yeah. So let that sink in. And when we think about, you know, when we think about the goals that we have to achieve here in Australia to reduce food waste and the benefits that will have to the community, they are absolutely astronomical. But think about that worldwide, right?
It's quite shocking.
It's quite shocking, but it is exciting. It is exciting because it gives us an opportunity. It gives us the opportunity to actually become change makers and do it by simply not wasting food, by simply connecting ourselves to that inherent value of food that we have discussed.
Absolutely. So I think you've just made a really good point, how we can, first of all, how this is low-hanging fruit. This is something that we and our viewers of this documentary can change starting tonight when they walk away from this viewing. And one of the small ways that we can help spark this change, this really exciting change, as you said, is by reconnecting with food. I think that's really interesting. I think that's a great point, how if we just start to view food as something more than a simple commodity that you can have that you can access at any time you want, and move it into something that is more of a resource, a valuable resource that we as Australians and as Victorians really need to start appreciating.
Yeah, so I believe that there is a disconnect between individuals and the inherent value of food. We live in an abundant society where everything
Absolutely.
is available to us at our fingertips. Literally, we can, like everything is just there available to us. You can grab one of these and just like grab everything that you want with one of these. So with our busy lives, we often don't have the time to plan our meals, to look into our pantry, inside our pantry, and in our fridges before we go to the supermarkets or the shops. Where a lot of us don't know how to store food correctly. You mentioned the bread before. It's all a matter of like how to store the food correctly, how to use a fridge properly. And
Definitely.
unfortunately, we don't have the systems to guide us on what foods must be used up first. So those who have at some stage in their lives grown food from seed to plate know the amount of love, time, labor, and resources that go into producing food. Those who have experienced hardship and at some stage weren't able to feed themselves or their families. I don't know if you guys have ever been in that situation, but it is absolutely heartbreaking, and it is hard, man. It is really hard, and it's undignifying. It makes you feel like you're not human to be in that situation. I
Right.
believe that food is a human right, but with every right comes a responsibility. Okay, so this is a very important factor.
Okay.
We have the right for food. We have the right for food.
Yes.
But we have the responsibility to reestablish the value and the respect for food. Everybody that is watching this documentary now, I can guarantee you, had someone come to them at some stage in their lives and say, "Don't waste that because someone's going hungry."
All the time.
Everybody, man, if it's a parent or if it's a grandparent or if it's an uncle or someone, has said, "Don't waste that, man. Like, come on, don't waste that. Someone's going hungry." You know what I mean? Like, someone really needs that food and you're throwing that out. Someone would have told every single person who is watching this documentary, food is the fuel for our bodies and it must be treated with more respect. That's the only way that we can overcome this.
I agree. 100%. 100%. I think that's a really important factor that prior to sitting down to interview you, I honestly had not considered. Just reestablishing that connection and that respect that food deserves as fuel for our body and as a right that we all as humans deserve. And I really like what you said about how every right comes with a responsibility. I think that's very important. And that's a really great takeaway for our viewers here.
Yeah, I think for all of us, man, we all need to remind ourselves that all the time. I think it's very important, and I actually realized that it's a conscious exercise, and it is a conscious exercise, man, to really look at your fridge, look at your pantry before you go shopping. I know we all live in such busy lives, man, but we do have the mantra at OzHarvest, which is the look, buy, store, and cook. Simple steps. It's such simple steps that people can take on and really, really change the way that they use food. So look at their pantries and the fridges before they go into the supermarket. Buy what they need. Like we have all walked into a supermarket hungry, right?
Yeah.
We walk into the supermarket hungry and everything sounds like a great idea. Like especially the chips section.
Oh, that middle aisle.
Oh,
Dangerous.
mate, I know we've all been there. It's and you're gonna buy more than you need. You're going to spend more than you should or that you had to. And you're going to end up with more waste. And that's just a natural thing. And we've all been there and we're all guilty of it. So it's not about pointing fingers or anything like that. We are all guilty of it. So that's it. Look before you go buy. Plan your meals. Make it fun, man. Like people think of cooking as like, oh no, it's a chore, it's a chore to go to the supermarket. Make it fun. Me and my partner, for example, we make it a day. It's a day that we just go and we pick what we're gonna eat and we have fun with it. And when we cook at home, we have fun with it. We do all of that together as as a family, as
Yeah,
humans, getting together and sharing a meal. It's a beautiful thing.
it is
Store the food
100%.
Storing food correctly, having the containers like those airtight sealed containers, that will save you a huge amount of money. Using a fridge, people think of the fridge as as just a cold box in your thing. But if you actually use the compartments in the fridge as they are meant to be used, you will be actually saving your food for much longer. Using your freezer, for example, as a pause button. If meat is getting up to its use by date, just put it in the freezer. It's like pressing a pause button on decomposition of the meat, and the meat will last.
I like that. Yeah, it's a pause button.
It's a pause
I
button.
really like that. Yeah.
Bacteria won't be actually proliferating inside that meat. And that's the thing. And you can use it. Like, I've got meat in my freezer that, because we're basically taking that conscious step of not eating too much meat. So meat that we have, it basically lasts we have to make it last for like 6 months. And I literally have meat in my freezer that has been expired for 6 months, but it was frozen on the day. So it's fine. And we take it out and we eat it when we need it. And cook what you have. So look in your fridge and know what you need to use up first, and understand your food and communicate to the food. Food shows it when it's going off. It starts showing us, and it really tells us, like, eat me now. And that's when you just go and you do it. Like if you've got like limp celeries or limp carrots or something like that, and you don't want to use them in a salad anymore because they're not so crunchy anymore, and you might just go, ew. Put them in a soup, man. Put them in a stew. There's different ways that you can do, and do a bit of research about zero waste cooking. Like beetroot leaves. They're beautiful in a stir fry. People chuck them out straight away. You know what I mean? Like, things like that. Be creative and have fun with it.
I agree. I think it's like a challenge almost when you get to your fridge and you're not sure what you're going to make for dinner tonight, and you see you have to pick all the things that could be going off and then create something out of that, and that's quite exciting. I personally find that to be a lot of fun and really rewarding as well when you create a good dish. And as time goes on, you'll get better at that, and you'll be creating different dishes out of different items that you once would have been throwing away. And that's not to say that these dishes aren't just as delicious as the dishes that you're making whenever these items are fresh straight out of the supermarket.
Or even more,
skill.
man. Like,
it's another skill that we can add to our tool belts.
And you can share that with your mates, of course, post-COVID, when you're allowed to have people in your households.
Absolutely.
Share that with your friends and just go, well, and this meal, guys, has just contributed to the environment and to the Australian economy and to the Australian social issues that we are facing. You know what I mean? Like, makes you a full activist just cooking a meal.
Just eating. And we all love to eat.
That's it.
Yeah,
that's it.
So we can eat like an activist. Well, it's exciting. I'm really excited to share this with everyone, and for the people watching to actually see this and hopefully take on this approach towards being a food activist, we could almost call ourselves.
It's food fighters.
It's really inspiring.
We call them food fighters, like
food fighters.
Our CEO, she's being dubbed as the food fighter in Australia. So we are all food fighters.
I like it. We're all food fighters. Hopefully after this documentary, we've got more food fighters out there in Australia and Victoria specifically. And I did want to talk about Victoria as an actual as a separate issue to the Australian food waste problem, purely because we are expecting our audience to be in the majority Victorians. So Victoria is actually the worst state in Australia for food waste. And you being the manager of operations for Victoria and South Australia, I'd love for you to share what your strategy is going to be in making Victoria a better state for food waste? What's OzHarvest doing out there on the ground that's fighting, that's making us and the OzHarvest team food fighters?
No worries. So we generally operate here under 4 pillars. So food rescue, education, engagement, and innovation. Last year shook things up a bit. So Melbourne has been hit particularly hard by COVID-19, as you guys know. And
Yes,
as
definitely.
a response to the pandemic and the continuous rising demand, especially the demand for food relief, on top of all the work that we do as business as usual, we developed and delivered food relief programs as well that saw appropriate and nutritious food made available to vulnerable communities in Metro Melbourne and regional Victoria. So just to give you an idea, food rescue operated consistently throughout every outbreak and lockdown in Melbourne. So we've had 6 of them so far. Between the 1st of March 2020 and the 31st of August 2021, we rescued 1,924,905 kilos of good, nutritious surplus food. So close to 2 million kilos of food that was going to waste from 473 Victorian food businesses, and we deliver that food directly to 181 Victorian charitable agencies. So
that's quite impressive.
In addition to that, between the 1st of March and the 31st of the 1st of March 2020 and the 31st of August 2021, OzHarvest purchased. So for the first time in 17 years, we had to purchase food. We purchased and delivered over 1 million kilos. So in addition to those 2 million, another a million kilos, 1,200,000 kilos was purchased and distributed through food relief programs. So by doing that, we managed to financially assist Victorian family-owned businesses across the state. So we purchased that food from family-owned small businesses, small Victorian businesses across the state through, ensuring like a hyper-local, community-centered approach to emergency response and to emergency relief to each of those areas around the state. So basically that whole idea of local businesses helping local communities, linking up and basically being that community. So 64 charities have been onboarded and serviced since the start of the pandemic. Every week in Victoria, Food Rescue rescues and delivers 26,000 kilos of food. Every week. When we include food relief, that number goes up to 43,000 kilos per week. It's nuts.
That's a lot of management on your behalf and the team over at OzHarvest's behalf. That's incredible.
It's amazing. I couldn't do it without the team. It's we owe that success to our team here. Our team they're just an incredible incredible bunch of people. But OzHarvest recognized that this strategy is required to address food insecurity. So even though our focus has always been food waste, and then and if we can fix food waste by creating a dent here and basically having an impact on food insecurity, making sure that people have access to food, brilliant. But this year we really had to put a lot of focus into food insecurity, but we do recognize that the strategy is required to address food insecurity in the long term for all Victorians must be holistic and include policy interventions, local level collaborations, school-based programs, nutrition education, food literacy, and of course, food relief initiatives. So we have our education programs, we have strong advocacy, we have food relief initiatives, we have extensive local level collaborations, And, that basically all of that combined clearly demonstrates the unwavering long-term commitment to the holistic, evidence-based approach to reducing food insecurity in Victoria, which is a major problem alongside the food waste problem that we've already discussed. So we work very closely. So we've been actively represented in the Vic Health's Food Systems Work Group, the DFFH, so the Department of Family Fairness and Housing Food Relief Task Force, and most recently, we're also taking part of the advisory board for the development of the first ever Victorian Food Stress Index with the Victorian Council of Social Services. So this work is ongoing, it's exciting, and it's critical to ensure that state government strategies and actions for response and recovery are aligned with the global best practice. And we basically work as advisors in that space. So from a food waste perspective, we are working closely with Sustainability Victoria, supporting their Path to Half efforts as part of their Circular Economy Business Innovation Centre. And Sustainability Victoria, they recognise that in order for us to reach our national target of halving food waste by 2030, the solutions must include increasing food rescue capacity tenfold in our state. So currently we rescue, this is the whole sector, including OzHarvest, we rescue about 6,000 tons of food. And by 2030, so Sustainability Victoria wants to increase that to 60,000, something that we really support. So there is quite a lot of movement there at government level. And we are very, very present, pushing the message, trying to push that message through. So at a national level, Ronnie and our team, they work with the federal government on the steering committee and sector action plan. And basically providing that same sort of guidance and advice there. As leaders in this space, OzHarvest, we acknowledge and we advocate for robust cross-sectorial partnership models that can deliver that tangible, that evidence-based solutions to these enormous societal challenges. So
absolutely, they are.
And it needs all of us, man. It really needs all of us. So in terms of education, for example, which is a key part of that. So we talked about the policy interventions. We talked about the food relief initiatives. We talked about the local level collaborations when we work with 473 businesses and 181 charities. We also have education programs. So in Victoria, we have our Feast. So Feast program. So that's a food education and sustainability training program. So 2020, 2021, we have launched Feast across Victoria, and we have at the moment 45 schools delivering the program, impacting over 1,500 students. So our next goal is to get to 300 schools. So it is Feast is a new initiative that basically will radically improve knowledge on nutrition and food waste in school children. So it's got a flow-on effect to the greater community. That's what we expect that to happen. So it is a unique, engaging program that will efficiently deliver education on healthy eating, sustainability, and food waste prevention, and support the Victorian commitment to reduce, food waste and ensure that Victorians adopt a healthier diet by 2025. So we have to realize that with food insecurity, it comes a public health crisis as well. So food
Yes.
security, basically, in its very concept, it means the inability of the individual to access healthy and nutritious food with the right of choice. So,
Okay.
we want to basically promote healthy eating habits and sustainable food practices that basically will allow to reduce food waste and create healthier habits by 2025. So essentially, we think that this has to be done through education, and FAST is aligned with the Australian curriculum, like with the key learning areas, with the under STEM, and the cross-curriculum priority of sustainability, which is absolutely brilliant. In addition to that, we have NEST as well, which is a nutrition education and skills training program, which is basically an outreach program. In spite of the lockdowns and the challenges of last year, we managed to deliver nests to agencies in Melbourne, teaching tens of vulnerable Victorians on like how to produce food on a budget and how to access and use nutritious food, which is basically that whole idea of food literacy, the whole idea of how to store food correctly, how to put together a meal plan, how to look after their health and well-being, and basically make sure that they are getting there. So it includes a fun and interactive activities. So that whole community sort of sense, they have their 2.5 hours per week, so 6 modules, and then they sit down at the end of those 2.5 hours and share a meal together. So it's practical cooking classes. Basically aligned with the Australian dietary guidelines, and works with everyone. So basically the program works with everyone to set the realistic goals around healthy eating, and these goals are reviewed and revised every week by our nutritionists and dietitians. And basically it creates that real, tangible, lasting change. And all of our programs are basically, all of that data is captured. All of that data is very carefully measured and monitored to guarantee the success of the programs. And this is just to cover the top line. I could literally go on all day here about
say so.
About our achievements, man. It's just been it's been an incredible year. I could literally write a book about what we've achieved last year, honestly.
I would love to see that one day,
mate. And
I would love to see that. I'm going to hold you to it.
Awesome. Well, as soon as I have some time. But I couldn't be prouder of our team here. And honestly, I couldn't be more grateful to our supporters as well. That keeps our wheels on the road. Our impact would not have been possible if it wasn't for these incredible people. And that's, and that's people like you guys sharing the message as well. You know what I mean? Like it's absolutely brilliant. We can't do what we do without the community. So this is absolutely brilliant. Every $1 that is donated to OzHarvest, it allows OzHarvest to deliver 2 meals to people in need. So that means, we've done some social return on investment calculations and analysis with this company called Bain & Co. last year in 2020. And we found that for every $1 invested in food rescue, $7.70 is returned to the community through reduced public health and welfare needs.
That's a pretty good return on investment, if you ask me.
It's awesome, right?
That's awesome. And
it's considering
and we
need it.
100%, especially after everything you've spoken about. Just building off the back of that, I think everyone would be pretty interested to know how they can donate $1 or more if they're feeling generous to OzHarvest to see that massive return go back into our community as Victorians.
Absolutely. So there's many ways that people can get involved with us. It's not necessarily just money, man. Like money is important. It keeps us going. But, we understand that times are tough as well, especially university students and international students, and like times are tough, so we understand, of course it is important, but there are many ways that people can basically roll up their sleeves and become food fighters.
Awesome.
Starting from their homes.
Yeah.
Stop wasting food at home. That's number one. Second, you can jump on our website, so it's www.ozharvest.org, or send us an email like to our team here in Melbourne on melbourne.info@ozharvest.org, and we'll talk. The challenges that we're facing are enormous, and we need all the support that we can get, being that financial, or being that people that want to volunteer or share some skills that they have, or if people think, oh, I know how to do this, and I think this could be really, really helpful. Just get involved. We are an ever-growing yellow family, and we basically welcome everybody here, and anyone and everyone that wants to fight the good fight, please join us.
That's brilliant. I think that's a good note to end on as well. Actually, I feel like we've covered a lot of really interesting topics. We've spoken about the issues, the economic, the environmental, and the social issues that food waste has on our country and our state. And we've spoken about what OzHarvest are doing. I really like the holistic approach that OzHarvest are taking. You guys are not only physically rescuing and then re-delivering food to those in need, but putting in work at a grassroots level, at an educational level, so the next generation of food fighters are better equipped, better informed to take on this issue and combat food waste. And as you said, and I love it, become food fighters.
That's a dream. That's a dream.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time, Bernardo. I would like to ask one more question, especially for the university students out there. Is there any way that university students can look into a graduate program or kickstart a career in fighting food waste?
Look, there are opportunities left, right, and center. There's always opportunity for thinkers. We want to inspire new thinkers in this space. We need people to be, really dressing up the jersey and really fighting the fight and learning about it and understanding how food systems operate, how food systems work. There are great opportunities for startups and for businesses in this area. I think this is a massive area of opportunity. I do encourage people to, get in touch with us if they want to learn about how they can actually make a difference in their community, in their households, and how can they just start sort of creating that impact more wider out there. So I think there's massive opportunities left, right, and center. So I do encourage people to just get in touch with us.
Absolutely. That's very exciting. Again, thank you very much for your time, Bernardo. Really appreciate the message that you're spreading and the actions that you and your team are actually taking to fight food waste. I know I myself feel very inspired after talking to you, and I really am going to be moving forward with the idea that food is it's a right, which makes it our responsibility.
That's exactly right, Owen. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and keep fighting the fight.
Thank you. Really appreciate it, Bernardo. Best of luck, and I'm sure our paths will cross again.
I'm sure they will. Speak
Wonderful.
soon.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.